Hello everyone. Before starting the video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thanks. Introduction. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Infotech. In today's video, we'll learn about the default web server access ports used by the UniFi network application. We'll also learn how to change these default web server access ports and discuss the reasons why network administrators need to change these default ports. By default, the UniFi network application uses HTTP port 8080 and HTTPS port 8443 for web management server access and communication. These ports allow network administrators to connect to the UniFi network application and manage network devices through a web browser. So, why do we need to change these default port numbers? Although the default ports work well in most deployments, there are situations where changing these default ports become necessary. The two main reasons behind the changing default ports are security and avoiding port conflicts. I will briefly explain both the reasons here, just to make you understand. 1. Security. When default port numbers are used, it becomes easier for attackers to identify services running on a network through port scanning. Since the default UniFi ports are well known, they may become targets for unauthorized access attempts or denial of service attacks. Changing the default port numbers adds an extra layer of security by making the service less predictable. It can help reduce exposure to automated scans and attacks. To access the UniFi Web Management Server, a user needs both the correct web access port number and valid login credentials. For example, if an attacker somehow obtains the login credentials but does not know which ports are being used, they must first identify the correct ports before attempting to access the server. By changing the default port numbers, we make it more difficult for unauthorized users to locate the UniFi web management interface. This can help with protecting our network from casual attackers and automated scanning tools. In short, using custom port numbers, along with strong passwords, can help improve the overall security of our UniFi network application. 2. Avoiding port conflicts. Another important reason to change the default port numbers is to avoid conflicts with other applications running on the same server. Most of the time, it happens that we install multiple web-based applications on a single server. If two applications attempt to use the same port number, a conflict occurs, preventing one or both applications from functioning properly. By assigning different port numbers, we can ensure that multiple applications can run simultaneously on the same server without interfering with each other. In this video, I'll explain everything step by step. First, I'll show you how to access the UniFi Web Management Server using the default ports. Then, we'll practically change the default port numbers and verify access to the UniFi network application using the newly assigned ports. Without further ado, let's get started. Testing the default HTTP and HTTPS web access port settings. This is the server where I have installed the UniFi network application and I use this server to manage my UniFi network. Let me open the UniFi application and then try to access the UniFi Web Management Server. If I click the Manage Server in Browser button, it takes me to the UniFi Web Management Server's login page. If we check the URL, we can see that the UniFi Web Server has opened using the IP address 127.0.0.1, which is also known as the loopback address. The loopback address actually refers to the local machine itself. In this case, it points to the server on which the UniFi network application is installed. The default port number is 8080, which the UniFi Network Server uses as its default HTTP port for accessing the UniFi Web Management Interface. In the username and password fields, enter the required credentials, and then, click the Sign In button. Once logged in, we can see the server's actual IP address, which is 10.0.2.100, displayed on the main page. When accessing the UniFi Web Management Server, we can also use the server's actual IP address, instead of the loopback address. However, if another application is already using the same HTTP port 8080, one or both applications may experience issues accessing their web management interfaces. Since I do not have any other application using port 8080 for web access, I do not get any errors when accessing the UniFi Web Management Server. Now, I will open another browser tab and try to access the UniFi Web Management Server using its actual IP address, 10.0.2.100. In the address bar, I will type http:// followed by the server's IP address, the default HTTP port number, and then /manage. Once typed the complete address, press Enter on the keyboard. Enter the login credentials, and then, click the Sign In button. On the main page, we can see the same IP address, which means, we can manually access the UniFi Management Server, using its static IP address and the correct port number. Now, I will open a new tab and show you how to access the UniFi Web Management Server, using the HTTPS protocol. In the address bar, type https, followed by the server's IP address, or the loopback address, then the default HTTPS port number, 8443, and then /manage. Once the complete URL has been entered, press Enter on the keyboard. A security warning page will appear, because I do not have an SSL certificate configured for HTTPS. Therefore, the browser displays this warning message. On this page, click the Advanced button and then, select the link provided below, to proceed to the website. Since I was already logged in through the HTTP interface, I am not prompted to enter the login credentials again. We have now accessed the UniFi Management Server, using both the default HTTP and HTTPS ports. Next, I will show you how to change the default port numbers for the HTTP and HTTPS protocols. Modifying and testing the default HTTP and HTTPS web access port settings. To change the default web access ports, we have make changes in the file named system.properties. Open this PC, then navigate to the C drive. Open the users folder, and then, open the folder for the user account that is currently logged in. In my case, I will open the folder named infotech. Next, open the Ubiquiti UniFi folder, and then, open the data folder. The file named system.properties contains the UniFi Network Applications configuration settings. Right-click this file and open it with Notepad. This file contains various configuration settings, but I will focus mainly on the web access settings for HTTP and HTTPS. We can see that the UniFi Network application uses the default HTTP port 8080 and the default HTTPS port 8443. The hash symbol at the beginning of a line indicates that the setting is currently commented out, and therefore not applied. Even if we change a port number and save changes in this file, the default setting will still be used, unless we remove the hash symbol. Now, I will change the default HTTP port number from 8080 to 8082 and remove the hash symbol. Save the file after making the changes. Although, we can assign many different port numbers to HTTP or HTTPS services, we should avoid using well-known or reserved ports that are already assigned to other services. We can search online to learn about well-known ports, registered ports, and commonly available ports that can be used for web traffic. After saving the changes, we must close and reopen the UniFi Network application, otherwise, the new settings will not take effect. Therefore, I will close the UniFi Network application and then reopen it to apply the changes. If I refresh the web management page now, it will no longer be accessible because the UniFi Network application has been closed. Let me reopen the UniFi Network application. Please wait a moment while the UniFi Network Server initializes. Once the server has fully initialized, if I refresh the page using the default HTTP port 8080, the web management interface will still not be accessible. This is because the changes have been applied, and the web management server is now listening on the newly assigned HTTP port 8082. I will keep the rest of the URL unchanged and simply replace the default port number with 8082. As we can see, the UniFi Management Server login page is now accessible, using the newly assigned HTTP port. Let me verify this once more. I will open a new browser tab and manually enter the complete URL, using the new HTTP port number. As shown, we have successfully changed the default HTTP port, used by the UniFi Network Server application. Now, I will revert the changes. Next, I will change the default HTTPS port number. I will replace the default HTTPS port 8443 with 8449. I will also remove the hash symbol at the beginning of the line, so that the new setting is applied. Finally, save the changes. If I try to access the UniFi Web Management Server, using the default HTTPS port 8443, the page is still accessible. However, if I try to access the UniFi login page, using the newly assigned HTTPS port, it will not be accessible yet. This is because the UniFi Network application must be closed and reopened before the changes can take effect. Let me close the UniFi Network application and then open it again. Any time we make changes to the system.properties file, the UniFi Network application must be restarted for those changes to be applied. Again, please wait a moment while the UniFi Network application initializes properly. As we can see, the message indicates that the UniFi Network application is starting up, so we need to wait for the initialization process to complete. Once the UniFi Network application has fully initialized, the login page will be accessible, using the newly assigned HTTPS port. The UniFi Network Web Management Server login page has now been successfully accessed, using the newly assigned HTTPS port number 8449. To save time, I will not enter the login credentials. However, if I now try to access the same page, using the default HTTPS port 8443, the page will no longer be accessible. This confirms that the changes made to the HTTPS port have been applied successfully. That's it. In this video, we successfully changed, applied, and tested access to the UniFi Web Management Server, using both the default and newly assigned HTTP and HTTPS ports. I hope you found this video helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Next video. Configuring SMTP and email settings in UniFi Network Server. In the next video, I will demonstrate how to configure SMTP or email settings in a UniFi network server. I will show you how to configure SMTP settings for sending email notifications when required. Although SMTP can be configured using a local email account, I will demonstrate the configuration process using a Google account. So, don't forget to watch my next video.